Hello and welcome to the Public Sector I Heart You podcast. My name is Matthew Hotten. I'm a senior consultant at West Midlands Employers. And for those of you who've watched some of our podcasts, you'll realise that we have a running theme of the analogy of a windmill, and how rather than building walls to protect ourselves from the winds of change, actually if we think about it as building a windmill, and we can actually enhance the wind and use the energy to put it to good use. And somebody who's very used to change and very used to sort of embracing change is our guest today, is Andrew Payne. Andrew is a speaker and a coach. And it was funny actually, Andrew, as I was coming in today, or yesterday in fact, my Gusto food box arrived. Now the reason I tell you this is because I've never had one of these things before, so I was very excited when it arrived, and it kind of made me think that I'd got a bit bored with the same old stuff that we eat out of the freezer, and that kind of got me thinking about change and windmills and all that sort of stuff. And I know from talking to you previously that change is a messy, complicated business, isn't it? And even small things like buying a Gusto box is kind of a little bit fraught with danger. I wonder why it is so hard to do some of these small changes.
Well, the Gusto thing, that is your choice. I'm imagining at some moment you thought, I know what I should do. That's very exciting. You've chosen it, you're inspired by it. But I wonder whether, when that box has arrived, at any point you felt these things that we should feel when there's change. You've gone through denial. Have you gone through any bitterness or regret yet?
What to do with the fish fingers, Andrew? That's the thing, It's like, what do you do with those? But this is the curve that you talk about, and there's loads of models on change. But what you talk about is that you don't feel they particularly are useful.
No, I think all models are useful as conversation starters.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the change curve that we often see, to think that we go through some kind of smooth curve for a change that we haven't chosen, that may not be completely positive for us, or maybe the outcome of that change is uncertain.
Yeah.
Then to think that we go through some smooth curve, that for me is where I struggle.
Yeah.
Because actually you can be a long way down the road with that change, and you could still be experiencing bitterness, regret, happiness too, a whole mix of stuff. So I prefer to see change as just a total mess, just a big splodge going out in all directions, where you could feel happy, inadequate, bitter, excited, inspired. You can feel that pretty much all at the same time. And that's particular change that you don't want. But then, as you've mentioned with Gusto, you wanted that change.
Yeah.
I wanted to change my holiday location this year. We went to Madeira and did some cool stuff. But at no point did I experience any of the things on the change curve.
But that's a function of the change, isn't it? It's like, there's change that you like, that you're in control of, that you drive. I choose to order a Gusto box, or Gusto, I'm never quite sure how to pronounce it. You choose to go to Madeira, so we're in control of that choice. There's a difference, isn't there, between how you feel about choice that you're in charge of and choice that's done to you. And I know what you mean about the curve. You're right. You don't track through that. Oh, now I'm in denial. Now I'm in this. Then and now I'm on the sunlit uplands. But I think accepting that you move up and down is quite a good description of the emotions you go through when the change is done to you.
Yeah, and I think the change curve is useful in that if you just took a note of the different emotions that one could experience at certain times, that alone is helpful. Understand that change is a big deal when it is thrust upon us and we've got no control over it. Change is a big deal because it always has been. It's not easy, but I think also the way that we live our lives today, perhaps bizarrely, like we should be ready to embrace change all the time, because our world feels like it's changing at a faster pace than ever before.
Yeah.
But somehow bizarrely, I feel like we're less prepared for change than ever before, because we tend to live our lives in the same old way that we always have done. We buy the same stuff, do the same stuff. And so I feel that perhaps doesn't prepare us as well for the change.
And it's interesting because in work, particularly within the public sector, there's changes all the time. It's, there's none of this nice, planned, comfortable, easy change that you can see coming. Change is popping up all over the place, isn't it? And we're just in that kind of work environment. We're almost fatigued by it. We have to deal with it all of the time. And yet, interesting point that you make about in your kind of outside of work life, you just do the same old. Just go down the same aisles, buy the same brand of I don't know why I'm saying fish fingers again, but crisps or whatever it is, you don't mix it up. Why is that, do you think? What's your view there?
I think many of us are burnt out and overwhelmed,
Right.
and we face so much change at work. So
Yeah.
we're just tired.
Fatigue is a big thing, isn't it?
Fatigue when we get home. I wonder whether there's, with so many of us online, we are quite courageous online in what we might, but offline, we've just become a bit more boring in some of our habits and more inward looking. And my encouragement to people, and I love your analogy, by the way. You haven't paid me to say this, of course, but walls and windmills. But if we want to be a windmill, to harness change,
Yeah.
to move with change, then I do think that there are things that we can do for ourselves in the good times to make it more likely that we can be that windmill,
Yeah.
which could be just trying something new, saying, actually, really thinking about, if I'm going to try and get fit, would I just do the same old stuff that I always do? And there's not wrong in doing some of that stuff, but is there something new that I've not done before? Actually, that's going to be a challenge for me. And actually, if people heard that I was doing it, they'd be like, wow, that's not like you. And those kind of things, I would be encouraging people, do those things in the good times so you get used to embracing fear, dealing with uncertainty, looking like a clown, not worrying too much about it, flailing, and all of that good stuff.
But this is interesting because was it last year you threw yourself out of a plane at about 15,000 feet, which kind of ticks all those boxes for me. It feels terrifying. Just talking about it makes my palms go just a little bit. Ugh. But you did that stuff.
Please don't remind me about
No,
my
no,
moment.
but all of those things that you talked about, so tell me about that. Is that part of your drive to sort of embrace that change?
It was my 50th birthday. I wanted maximum scare fest,
Right.
but minimum risk, because I
Alton
wanted
Towers, wouldn't that have been a safer bet?
possibly, but I wanted to do something that I would really look back on and be proud of, and just getting on a roller coaster that's over in 2 minutes. And so for me, it was utterly terrifying. I felt when I booked it, will I even go through with this? So I got some funding in quickly to make sure that I couldn't back out, do it for a charity. Now I'd feel really bad. So I put some pressure on myself to do it. It was literally the most jaw-droppingly terrifying thing I've ever done. But then, and I was glad when it was over, genuinely. And I wouldn't rush to do it again. It was every bit as terrifying as I thought it would be, if not more. But actually, strangely, I did come away thinking, well, but I survived and I was okay. And I faced one of my worst fears, because I hate flying
Yeah.
and I hate heights.
Right.
And I was okay. And so actually, it was a very unusual thing that I did. My family couldn't quite believe that I put myself up for it. But and I'm not saying you have to do a parachute jump.
Good.
Maybe if you're a little wooden on the dance floor, just go and do some dance classes or something new that you wouldn't otherwise do. I think that's a really important part of just creating better habits so that we can deal with change. We need some stability at home, of course,
Yeah.
but just keeping things, mixing things up, embracing change, embracing fear as part of just normal life. I argue it equips us so that we can then deal with uncertainty. So, I mean, with my income, I'm self-employed. I could make, I don't know how much I'll make next year. I never know how much I'll make from year to year. So I'm very used to that. I'm very used to my business going up and down, uncertainty. But if you suddenly had to deal with that uncertainty, you weren't used to it, you're probably going to struggle with that.
And would the sort of the curves and the models and all this stuff, then start to have a bearing? Do you think? Can you sort of track some of the emotion that some of these models talk about? Because I take your point, but I still think that, there's some real there's an emotional journey that goes on through change, and some of some of the things that you're talking about around what you've done. I wonder whether it builds our resilience to change, maybe.
I think it does. And I think, if you said to me, Andrew, got bad news for you, your business, I can see into the future, your business will collapse next year. It's over for you as a speaker and trainer. The market's gone. Of course, I'm going to feel pain,
Yeah.
but I know in myself now that I wouldn't feel the overwhelming panic that I might have felt years ago. I know I'd be taking a step back and go, oh, okay, wow. And I would experience some of that change curve, but with far less panic, because I'm just much better placed at dealing with change, that suddenly everything's gone. And so years and years ago, I had a very successful recruitment firm. It went kaput in the banking crisis, and literally my world was gone. I did not cope well. I could not process it. I couldn't fathom it. I couldn't make good decisions. It was years literally living in my parents' spare bedroom with no job, no income, battling mental health. That had probably a bigger impact at the time on my mental health than exiting the abusive relationship I'd been in for 10 years. The loss of that business, I just couldn't process it. Whereas today, I would be able to process it. It would still be painful. So I think their emotions described on that change curve, I would still work through some of those at a certain point, but that overwhelming panic and inability to do anything about my new predicament, if my business was, that wouldn't be there, because I'm used to thinking through
Yeah.
uncertainty, dealing with it.
Yeah, because you're kind of embracing uncertainty, aren't you? You're going out looking for it
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
some way, aren't you? So and does that build your resilience? You know, jumping out of a plane, you know, whatever it is that going onto a dance floor and learning how to tango. Is that building resilience so that when work changes come along, you feel better able to cope? But I say you, I mean, kind of us, if you like. It helps us become, more fluid and more agile when it comes to some of these changes. We feel less fatigued by it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as a little habit, I'm not saying anyone should do this, but after the parachute jump, I'd always said to myself as a kid, seeing people going off the high diving boards, oh, I could never do that. And after the parachute jump, I was like, actually, I probably could. I just going to take me some time. So I have diving lessons now every week
Unless it's a
off the diving
fifteen
boards.
thousand high diving board, you get
Yeah, not
it's a lot
quite
less
that
of
far.
it's a lot less of a fall, isn't it?
Yeah. But you can really hurt yourself. I'm more likely to hurt myself off a diving board than a parachute jump. But every week I'm at that dive pool now doing stuff that's scary. And that's really good. I come back feeling so mellow
Yeah.
and able to just process stuff and deal. If I've had a bad week at work and I don't quite know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to react, I feel stuck. After a session on the diving boards, everything feels like I can just think more clearly, anything's possible. And I think it's this sense of I have to embrace fear every
Right.
week.
Right.
And I come away having done that every week. It's my choice to do it.
Does it get any easier though? I mean, are you as scared? You won't be as scared now as that first time you did it because you know what's coming, right? You know what to expect. You know how long you're going to be falling, how that feels, hitting the water, or is it still?
It's less scary doing the stuff that you know.
Yeah.
So I can do certain dives from certain heights. So that doesn't scare me. But doing anything new, you could screw that up and really hurt yourself. So and every week I'll try and do something new. So no, there's always a fear factor within those lessons.
Because eventually, diving is something that is new to you, but eventually it will become mundane. It'll just become routine, and then all of a sudden that fear comes away. And then if all you ever do is dive, guess what? You're just back to that mundane mundaneness of me eating fish fingers every Friday because it's a Friday and it's a fish day. Just that becomes the norm. So you got to keep pushing yourself, I
Got to
guess,
keep
right?
pushing yourself. Yeah, there'll come a time where maybe diving's done its thing, where I've done all the heights. I'm progressing the heights
How high are you
at the
going
moment.
now? Just for
So I'm diving from 5.
5, okay.
Yeah, doing different types of dives from 5, but I want to go up to 10 eventually. That's the goal. But I think having something in your life, having that self-awareness to say, actually, is there stuff that I do that's new, that's a little bit scary? Have I become a creature of habits? Because if I have, being that windmill in a working context may be harder for me than actually if I have some stuff. So that's my point with
Yeah.
with
How do we translate that then into leadership, do you think, particularly within the public sector, where we talked earlier, change is all around us. How can we take some of the lessons that you're learning from what you do and the environment in which you work in and bring that thinking into leadership in the public sector?
I think if we can move away from this curve where you would expect now everybody's in the integration phase. Isn't it wonderful? Thank goodness for that. We don't have to have any more negativity now because we've all moved into the integration phase. So I think understanding that as leaders, that actually people can be thrown back into that denial and chaos way, way along their journey
Yeah,
with change.
absolutely.
So I think that compassion is really important. I think it's really important to acknowledge how hard stuff is today and not gloss that over. I don't know if you've heard of the Stockdale Paradox.
No, no. Tell me about the
The
Stockdale
Stockdale
Paradox.
Paradox. I love the Stockdale Paradox. And this really sums up, I guess, my approach to change. And it's really helped me actually as a person, because I once got involved in this real sort of positive coaching thing where everything's amazing. That's not me, actually. I'm quite grounded. So how do you be grounded and positive at the same time? So the Stockdale Paradox was named after a guy called Jim Stockdale, who was the longest serving resident at the Hanoi Hotel, an infamous prisoner of war camp in Vietnam.
Yeah.
He was in there for like 7 or 8 years, tortured throughout his time there, but he did survive.
Yeah.
He came out alive and,
Yeah.
and survived. Many of his peers didn't. And he was asked afterwards, it seems like a reasonable question, well, how come you survived and your peers didn't? And one of the things he said was really interesting to me. He said, well, many of my peers died of a broken heart. They were optimists. And I always thought, well, optimists live longer, have better relationships, are happier. So how does that work out? But he said what they do is they'd say, oh, we'll be out by Christmas. But they weren't out by Christmas. So then they'd say, oh, we'll be out by Easter. But they weren't. And as each beacon that they were holding on to passed without them getting out, eventually their hopes got crushed. There's only so many times your hopes can get crushed. And they fell into apathy, gloom. And he said they died of broken hearts. They were broken in spirit. He never was, because he accepted this won't change anytime soon. It's a complicated conflict. I'm in here for the long term. I'm going to have to find a way to cope day to day. But he never lost his long-term hope that he would get out in the end. So my plea to people in a leadership position where their teams may be going through change is acknowledge how hard this is today in temporary terms. Don't try and gloss that over, and allow people to feel that pain and come back to that pain. If you think they've moved forward and suddenly they've not, don't be frustrated by that. That's just normal. But also alongside that, you have to have this long-term message of hope as well, and some tangible ideas of how you hope to get there. And for me, that was a really important way of inspiring hope, but doing so in a real and grounded way.
And realizing, as you say, that it's messy. It's a splat. I think you described it, isn't it? It is, as you say, it's not step 1, step 2, step 3. It's very much more chaotic than that.
Yeah.
And being able to sort of, just keep people on track, as
And
best
you
you
may
can
never
during that process.
know. Everyone's different.
Yeah.
So how they deal with change may be affected by what's going on at home.
Yeah.
I know for me, as an example, when I was diagnosed with chronically low vitamin D several years ago, I didn't really have any idea that I was chronically low in vitamin D. My wife said I was a bit grumpy at the time. I felt a bit low. I felt a bit down. But then when I was prescribed the highest dosage vitamin D you can be prescribed, about 8 weeks later, I felt much better. So had I been going through change in that time of low vitamin D, I might have struggled with it because I felt rubbish anyway. Nothing to do really with, well, it is to do with the change, but it was to do with vitamin D and not getting enough daylight and being inside the whole time. And as a leader, leading a big team, you're not going to know all those details. So that's why it's important we're patient with people. We understand that they may have an up day, a good day with the change, but that doesn't mean that they're now in the integrating upward curve and they won't go back, which is why for me change is messy.
And who knew that the answer could just be vitamin D?
Potentially.
It's interesting. Look, we're coming to the end, but I'm just interested to know what you do. You have your doing. What still makes you anxious? What's still the challenges for you, Andrew? What do you do that next that's going to push you outside of that comfort zone? What still intimidates you, if that's the right word?
I need to find a next challenge, I think, but still the diving has it because I'm pushing my dives, and I've just learned to dive backwards, and I need to push that one higher, and that is intimidating me. I will push it higher, but at the moment that's quite scary. I actually, one of the things that provides the most anxiety for me is just parenting, because it's so stressful. And you look at your kids and you're like, oh no, they did not just do that. And the balance between being a helicopter parent, which you know you shouldn't be, and leaving your kids to it, but you don't want them to kill themselves or each other with crazy antics. So I do find, in terms of an anxiety inducer, parenting is huge.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a whole different topic, but a lot of how I manage that is trying to sort of self-talk. Being able to talk about that openly at work is helpful as well with other parents.
But all this stuff, isn't it? All of these things, they're all great examples of how change impacts our lives, whether it's the children, whether it's the stuff we do outside of work, whether it's ordering a Gusto food box because you're royally sick of spag bol or whatever it is. These are all small things, but they're just and change is a lot of the time, it's just small stuff. It's the incremental change that happens, and it's just making sure that we're ready and prepared for that stuff, I guess, isn't it? And not be afraid to sort of build our resilience to change by experiencing it and challenging ourselves a bit more.
Absolutely. And making decisions and trying stuff is so important. I mean, I bake all our own stuff at home now. I didn't think that would improve my confidence particularly, but it really has. It really has. Just a silly skill like that. But then that then affects other areas of my life. So remembering that all of the different bits of our lives are interconnected, the action you take in one part of your life will undoubtedly have an impact on others as well.
What a fantastic place for us to end. Andrew, it's been a real pleasure having you with us today. Thank you very much indeed to everybody who's been watching and listening. And please, we've got lots of other episodes that you can delve into if you want to and have a look at. But in the meantime, thanks very much indeed. Bye-bye. Cheerio.